Okay, let's dive in. Welcome everyone to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
So today we're digging into this pretty unique source video. It gives a really interesting view of Brazil, focusing on what it presents as absurdities and these really sharp contrasts. Often quite funny, actually.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, the source isn't just, showing things passively. It's making commentary. It pulls together all sorts of stuff, political points, social observations, even just everyday annoyances and internet jokes. It's a real mix.
Right, and our goal here isn't just to recap the video. We want to really unpack the main themes, the critiques it's leveling, and honestly, what makes the funny bits work. It's fascinating how this source uses humor, uses satire to point out things it sees as inconsistent.
And some very relatable experiences, too, even if they're shown in this very specific Brazilian context.
Exactly. And that technique, that juxtaposition you mentioned before we started, is key, isn't it? Putting very different things side by side.
Absolutely. That's sort of the core method here, showing those contrasts to make a point.
And it gets right into it. The source starts by bringing up a statement from President Mollusk, and the promise that poor citizens should have the right to the very same medical exams as the president gets.
Yeah, on the surface, a powerful statement, right?
Okay.
About equality in healthcare.
It sounds like it. But then, boom, the source cuts immediately to this scene it depicts at a public clinic, a UPA. And, well, it paints a very, very different picture of trying to get healthcare.
Starkly different picture. Yeah. The source shows what looks like, frankly, chaos.
And chaos might be putting it mildly based on the description. It mentions people aggressively demanding to be seen. And these specifics, the source notes, women holding tree branches.
Yeah, and people banging on the doctor's door.
Right. And yelling that exact phrase, "My president said I get all the exams."
It's intense. What the source seems to be doing there is creating this deliberate, maybe even jarring contrast. You've got the high-level political promise about equal access, and then you're slammed against what the source portrays as the raw, difficult reality of actually trying to get that access in a system that's clearly under stress, at least in this depiction.
It makes you think, doesn't it, about that gap between, the words, the rhetoric, and the actual lived experience.
Definitely. And it really shows the kind of pressure cooker situation that can happen when there's huge demand and, well, limited resources.
So after showing us that intense scene, the source then does a complete pivot, almost whiplash.
It does. It shifts to another fascinating juxtaposition, this time focused on a government minister.
Right, the minister depicted at a Bell Marx concert.
Yeah, and the details the source picks out are just perfect for comedic effect. He's there in a full suit and tie.
At a concert?
Exactly, surrounded by security guards, waving his arms around, looking very enthusiastic.
And the source's commentary is just dripping with sarcasm, isn't it? Like, questioning this suit, is it Halloween? Is he trying to stand out?
And then that totally random detail the source speaker throws in, claiming the minister smells like tangerines.
Where does that even come from?
Who knows? But it's memorable, right? The point the source seems to be making by putting these two scenes back to back, the chaos at the clinic, then the minister in his suit at the concert, is about a perceived detachment.
Yeah, it suggests a kind of gulf, doesn't it? Between officials enjoying themselves, maybe a bit isolated in their formality, and the struggles of ordinary people shown just before. It's a visual way of arguing there's a disconnect.
Precisely. A visual argument.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Because the source doesn't just use contrast, it also uses straight-up mockery sometimes, specifically to critique certain kinds of activism it shows.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's that example in the source focusing on some Canadian climate activists.
Right, protesting for the total end of fossil fuels, which is a huge goal. But the way the source shows their protest, well, it's not exactly flattering.
No. They're shown dancing in this way that the source speaker clearly thinks looks kind of silly.
Ineffective. And the commentary is just biting sarcasm, suggesting this specific dance protest is somehow going to magically shut down every oil well on Earth, like overnight.
Yeah. It seems like the source is using this specific example to question, the effectiveness of certain protest methods. Is it about making a real impact, or does it sometimes become more about the performance, the spectacle?
That's the critique, yeah.
Yeah.
That it feels performative rather than substantive, at least in this portrayal. So moving away from the big political stuff, the source also zooms in on more like everyday behaviors, what it sort of frames as a culture of taking advantage.
Right. And there's that anecdote from the source video, the one that apparently went viral, about the woman at the all-you-can-eat Sofia place.
Yes. Yes, yes. She proudly admitted taking extras home.
That's the one. The source says she took 9 extra Sfias, hid them in her Boticario bag.
9.
9. And her justification, which the source presents as almost the punchline, was just, everyone does it.
Wow. And the source speaker really jumps on that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Calling it like a common Brazilian thing, wanting to get a little unfair advantage.
Yeah, framing it as a kind of minor corruption or referencing the garçon law mentality.
It's interesting how that tiny story, taking a few extra pastries, is used by the source to open up this bigger discussion about ethics, social norms, and that blurry line between cleverness and, well, dishonesty.
Exactly. A line that probably exists everywhere, but the source frames it using this specific Brazilian concept.
Okay, switching to something much lighter now. The source definitely finds humor in something we can probably all relate to, the pure struggle of a language barrier.
Oh, absolutely. There's this great scene it includes showing a Brazilian woman trying her best to order food in English somewhere in the U.S.
And the dialogue examples the source pulls out are just gold. I want one of this.
And my friend, you want other of this.
Yes. 2 of this salad, 1 for me, 1 for my friend. You can just picture the scene, the confusion.
Yeah.
And the waiter trying to figure it out.
Moment.
Yeah.
Memento. It's so relatable, isn't it? That awkward, kind of funny, kind of painful experience of trying to do something simple in another language. The source really captures that shared frustration.
It does. It's a nice moment of pure observational humor.
Right.
Okay, but then the source gets sharp again. There's this really short, pointed story about, immediate consequences. Karma, maybe?
Ah, the lizard incident. Yes. Simple setup. A man throws a stone at a lizard.
Simple action, yeah. But the reaction, the source shows the lizard actually chasing the guy down.
And he trips and falls.
He does. It's like something out of a cartoon, but presented as real.
Yeah.
And the source speaker's take is just perfect. Karma.
Or that classic saying, don't mess with those who are quiet. It's physical comedy, but the source gives it this little moral tag.
And right in the middle of that lizard bit, the speaker squeezes in this very specific political joke about how First Lady Janja might pronounce legato as legato.
Right, and he jokes about gentrifying his own words.
It's such a quick aside, but it blends that slapstick moment with a super specific insider cultural political jab, which feels very typical of the source's overall style.
Definitely. It layers things like that constantly.
So the source also tackles modern life, right? Specifically, the whole issue of social media filters and online appearances.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. It shows examples of women looking, drastically different with beauty filters on compared to when they're off.
The transformations can be pretty shocking sometimes. And the source quotes one woman's reaction, which is quite telling. My God, look how beautiful I am. Then the filter switches off. What witchcraft is this?
Haha, yeah. And the source frames it with humor, but there's a clear warning underneath, calling filters the devil's work.
And saying that online appearances can be so misleading it causes new trauma unlocked every day for people seeing them. That's the source speaker's line.
It's a really relevant point, isn't it? That disconnect between the curated online self and reality. The source uses humor to talk about a real anxiety many people feel today.
Definitely taps into something current. Then, back to the small, everyday stuff. The source includes this anecdote about a really common frustration, arguing about small change.
Ah, the lottery house story, recounted by a woman in the source video.
Yeah, and the basic issue was the cashier claiming they didn't have 50 centavos for her change.
A classic scenario.
Yeah.
But the customer, as the source presents it, had this simple but really effective comeback.
She did. She basically pointed out the hypocrisy, right? How businesses expect us to always have the exact amount.
Or pay electronically.
But they don't always seem prepared to give small change back.
Exactly. The source highlights it as this tiny, relatable moment of pushing back against a common annoyance.
It's quite satisfying, actually.
It is. A small victory. Okay, so beyond all the critiques and social points, the source also just includes moments of, pure, silly fun, usually involving animals or kids.
Yeah, those are sprinkled in, shorter clips, clearly just there for a laugh, based on reactions, physical comedy, stuff that's pretty universal. Like the cats freaking out over farts. That's timeless internet gold.
Totally. Or that clip, you just have to see it, of the little kid's face watching his dog get its temperature taken at the vet, rectally.
Oh my God. The shock?
Pure, unadulterated shock. The source speaker even admits crying with laughter watching it. And you kind of get why.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need that kind of uncomplicated, silly laugh.
Nice.
And the source uses these clips almost like punctuation, maybe, a contrast to the heavier stuff.
Could be. Or just knows its audience enjoys cat videos and funny kid reactions.
Fair point. And then finally, the source brings together some of its funniest bits in a compilation. It's a classic prank, really, getting presenters on live shows to read out ridiculous, suggestive names.
Oh, that's always funny. This part shows TV and radio hosts just trying so hard to keep it together.
Trying and often failing, while reading names sent in by viewers specifically to trip them up.
And the source lists some of the examples. They're exactly what you'd expect. Paula Tigano, Jacinto Leite Aquino Digo,
Paula Vadinho, Milton Corralio,
Paula Noku, H. Romeo Pinto.
Duto Cucabaludo, Thomas Trabando Pinto, Jibadura. I mean, you can just picture the poor presenter trying to read those with a straight face.
It's impossible. The source frames it perfectly as just classic kind of lowbrow internet humor. And watching the presenters struggle, well, the struggle is real, as they say. It's funny because it's live and it's awkward and it's human.
Okay, wow. So let's kind of wrap our heads around this. We've journeyed through quite a bit from the source material, haven't we? From big picture stuff like politics and healthcare, through critiques of social habits and activism, down to very relatable things like language barriers, online filters.
And then just pure comedy animal reactions, kids, those prank names.
It's quite the collection.
Yeah.
And what really stands out, as we said, is how the source uses that juxtaposition, right? And this very specific, sarcastic, humorous tone to basically point out things it sees as absurd or inconsistent.
Yeah, it's definitely presenting a particular viewpoint, an opinionated take, but delivered mostly through humor and contrast, focusing on these specific chosen aspects of life.
So thinking about how this source stitches all these different pieces together, the really serious observations next to the totally silly stuff, what does that tell us? How do these observations, presented with this kind of humor, connect to broader themes about, society, human behavior, maybe hypocrisy?
Well, it seems to suggest that for whoever created this source video, humor is more than just entertainment. It's a tool. It's a way to process things, to critique them, to highlight contradictions they perceive in the world.
Like a coping mechanism almost.
Yeah.
Or a way to comment.
Maybe both. It could be a release valve for frustration, but it's definitely also a form of commentary, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. So here's a final thought maybe for you, the listener, to chew on. What does this specific mix in the source, the really sharp social critique, right alongside some pretty lowbrow gags, what does that blend tell us about how people, maybe particularly in the context this source comes from, process difficult or frustrating realities? Where do they find release or connection, or maybe even a way to speak truth through laughter?
It's interesting to think about how different kinds of humor can coexist and what functions they serve together in a piece like this. Definitely something to mull over.